What if I told you there was a professional boxer who looked like he'd never seen the inside of a gym, yet destroyed some of the most conditioned athletes on the planet? A man whose physique resembled your uncle at a barbecue more than a fighter, but whose right hand sent over 77 opponents to the canvas. Eric Butterbean Esch didn't just break the rules of what a fighter should look like. He shattered them with brutal efficiency, and his best knockouts are, honestly, some of the most satisfying on YouTube. But how did a 400-pound man with a gut that hung over his trunks become one of the most feared knockout artists in combat sports? And why did professional fighters who'd spent years sculpting their bodies keep underestimating him until it was too late? To find that out, we need to go back to 1994. Jasper, Alabama. Population, barely 14,000. The local county fair was in full swing, and among the usual attractions, fried food, carnival rides, aging roller coasters, sat a boxing ring hosting a Toughman contest. These weren't professional bouts. No rankings, no regulations beyond the bare minimum. Just regular guys throwing hands for prize money and bragging rights. Standing at the edge of that ring was Eric Esch, a 27-year-old bouncer who tipped the scales at 400 pounds. His friends had been goading him for weeks. He'd been training, if you could call it that. In his garage, Eric had hung a heavy bag and spent hours working on one thing: his right hand. Not combinations, not footwork, not defense. Just that one devastating punch, because Eric understood something fundamental about physics that his future opponents would learn the hard way. Mass times velocity equals force. And Eric had plenty of mass. The night of the contest, opponents took one look at the big man in stretched out shorts and saw an easy payday. A guy that size couldn't move, right? Couldn't have cardio, couldn't slip punches, couldn't possibly last more than 30 seconds before gassing out. They were right about everything except the part that mattered. Eric Esch knocked out 4 men that night in a combined total of less than 8 minutes. The way he did it was almost identical each time. Let them come in confident, slip just enough to avoid the worst of it, then boom, that right hand would connect, and another body would hit the canvas. He won $500. More importantly, he'd found his calling. Over the next 3 years, Eric dominated the Toughman circuit. We're not talking about close decisions or technical victories. We're talking about 68 knockouts in 77 fights. Promoters started billing him as Butterbean, a nickname that was simultaneously an insult and a warning. The insult was obvious. Look at him. The warning came when you made the mistake of believing the insult. But Toughman contests had a ceiling. No matter how many opponents Eric starched, he wasn't making real money, and he definitely wasn't being taken seriously. So in 1994, at 28 years old, Eric Esch made a decision that would change combat sports forever. He was going to turn professional. A 400-pound man with no amateur pedigree, no formal training, and a body that looked like he'd never met a vegetable wanted to compete professionally? The thing was, Eric didn't care what they thought. He'd spent 3 years proving people wrong, and he saw no reason to stop now. His team had to get creative. Traditional boxing commissions weren't going to license someone that heavy, so they found a loophole. 4-round exhibition bouts under modified rules. Technically not professional boxing, but close enough. October 15th, 1994. Eric Butterbean Esch walked into his first professional-style bout against Billy Smith in Birmingham, Alabama. The weigh-in was a spectacle. Billy Smith, 220 pounds of muscle, abs you could bounce quarters off, the kind of physique you'd see on a fitness magazine. Butterbean, 400 pounds, gut hanging out, looking like he'd just rolled out of an all-you-can-eat buffet. Smith laughed during the stare-down. Not a little chuckle, a full, disrespectful laugh. The laugh lasted exactly 93 seconds into the first round. That's when Butterbean's right hand connected with Smith's jaw and sent him face first to the canvas. The referee didn't even bother counting. Smith wasn't getting up. What just happened? You could hear someone yell from the crowd. What happened was reality meeting expectations. Billy Smith had expected a fat guy who'd gas out. What he got was a freight train with malicious intent. Over the next 2 years, Butterbean developed a reputation that was equal parts fascinating and terrifying. His fights followed a pattern so predictable you could set your watch to it, yet opponents kept falling for it. Johnny Cash once sang about a boy named Sue. Butterbean was fighting guys named the Terminator, the Hammer, the Annihilator. All these intimidating nicknames attached to sculpted physiques and impressive records. None of it mattered when that right hand landed. July 20th, 1995. Butterbean faced Mitchell Rose in St. Louis. Rose was everything Butterbean wasn't. 6 feet 2 inches, 240 pounds, looked like he was carved from granite. The tale of the tape was brutal. Rose had a 6-inch reach advantage, was 160 pounds lighter, and had the kind of six-pack that suggested he'd never even heard of pizza. The betting lines were ridiculous. Rose was a heavy favorite. 48 seconds. That's how long Mitchell Rose's sculpted physique and reach advantage lasted. Butterbean walked through his jabs like they were mosquito bites, backed him into the corner, and detonated a right hand that Rose later said felt like getting hit with a refrigerator.
Where the nickname came from. Right now, he's... Butterbean throwing clubbing punches. Mitch Rose has a look on his face like, what have I gotten myself? Butterbean. Let's go put concentration on you. Butterbean took a straight right. Nothing happened. They're going to add up. Step it up a little bit and throw punches to the body. It's just all power and clubbing punches. If not, Butterbean's in trouble tonight. But right now, it seems like hit, not get hit. Right now, he's getting hit.
Well, those punches, Tony, you know, after a while, Rose, you catch him on top of the head, but eventually you're going to catch him on the chin.
He caught him right there. This is all Rose is about. Big right hand. And Butterbean was staggered. Here comes Jones in for the kill. Butterbean against the rope. Butterbean getting tattooed by Mitch Rose. Right hands down the pipe. Butterbean just staggers back from the left, and here we go against the rope, buddy.
But it wasn't just the knockouts that were building Butterbean's legend, it was the reactions. Every fight followed the same script. Pre-fight, opponents smirking at weigh-ins, making fat jokes, flexing their abs. During, confusion as their best shots bounce off. After, either unconscious or suddenly very respectful. By 1996, Butterbean had become something unique in combat sports. A legitimate draw who existed in his own category. He wasn't fighting for world titles, wasn't on anyone's pound-for-pound list, but he was making money, and, more importantly, he was must-see TV. Promoters loved him. Put Butterbean on a card and suddenly you had casual fans buying tickets. Why? Because everyone wanted to see if tonight would be the night someone figured out how to beat the fat guy. And every time the answer was the same. No, tonight is not that night. His training footage became the stuff of legend for all the wrong reasons. Or were they the right reasons? While other fighters were doing wind sprints and eating chicken breast, Butterbean was hitting the heavy bag in his garage, same as always. No running, no ab work, no meal prep. Just that right hand over and over, perfecting the one thing he needed to be great at. A reporter once asked him about his conditioning program. "I condition my right hand to knock people out," Butterbean replied. "Seems to be working." He wasn't being arrogant, he was being honest. Eric had discovered something that fitness influencers and conventional wisdom refused to accept. For what he was doing, his body was perfect. He didn't need to go 12 rounds. He needed to go 2 minutes. And for 2 minutes, he was unstoppable. February 15th, 2002. Most people who weren't combat sports fans knew nothing about Eric Butterbean Esch. That was about to change in the most brutal way possible. Jackass. The movie was about to premiere, and Johnny Knoxville, never one to make sensible decisions, had decided he wanted to fight a professional boxer, not spar with, not train with, actually fight. And somehow, someone thought pairing him with Butterbean was a good idea. The setup was simple. Butterbean and Johnny Knoxville in a department store, 3 one-minute rounds. Winner takes all. Knoxville came out in boxing gear, bouncing around, throwing jabs. He looked like someone who'd watched a few boxing matches and thought, how hard could this be? 28 seconds into the first round, Butterbean landed a left hook that sent Knoxville sprawling into a rack of clothes. The footage is hard to watch. Knoxville goes down like a dropped puppet, clearly concussed, clearly not okay. He got back up because Johnny Knoxville's survival instinct has always been broken, and Butterbean immediately put him down again with a right hand that echoed through the store. The referee stopped it. Knoxville spent the next several minutes not knowing where he was. The footage made it into the movie, and suddenly, millions of people who'd never heard of Butterbean now knew one thing: don't fight the fat guy. But mainstream fame wasn't enough for Eric. By the early 2000s, mixed martial arts was exploding in popularity, and Butterbean, never one to back down from a challenge, decided he wanted in. The thing about MMA that made people doubt Butterbean even more than boxing was obvious. You can't just rely on one punch. You need wrestling, submissions, kicks, ground game, skills that require flexibility, endurance, and mobility. Three things that no one associated with Butterbean. January 10th, 2003. K1 Beast in Yokohama, Japan. Butterbean's opponent was Genki Sudo, a legitimate mixed martial artist with submission skills and a 10-4 record. The Japanese crowd was buzzing. This was going to be a massacre, right? The skilled fighter would take the boxer down, submit him, and expose the whole Butterbean myth. For 2 minutes and 47 seconds, that's exactly what looked like it was happening. Sudo took Butterbean down immediately, got his back, tried for a rear naked choke. The problem was, Butterbean's neck was so thick that Sudo couldn't get his arm under the chin. It was like trying to choke a fire hydrant. Butterbean powered out, stood up, and in the clinch against the ropes, landed a short right hand that sent Sudo to the canvas. Fight over. Over the next several years, Butterbean would compile a 17-10 record in MMA. Were those world championship numbers? No. But consider what that actually means. A 400-pound man with minimal grappling training won more than half his fights against actual mixed martial artists. He submitted people. He survived submission attempts. He proved, once again, that conventional wisdom about what a fighter should look like was just that. Conventional and often wrong. But the ultimate test came on July 27, 2002. Butterbean was going to fight Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes, former heavyweight champion of the world. The man who defended his title 20 times. The same Larry Holmes who'd gone toe-to-toe with Muhammad Ali, Ken Norton, and Jerry Cooney. One of the greatest heavyweights in boxing history. Sure, Holmes was 52 years old and well past his prime, but this was still Larry Holmes, a man who'd forgotten more about boxing than most fighters would ever learn. The press conference was exactly what you'd expect. Holmes, dignified and professional, talking about his legacy. Butterbean, gut hanging out, talking about his right hand. The contrast was almost comical. "I've fought men half my age with twice the skill," Holmes said. Respect to Butterbean for taking this fight, but experience beats everything. On fight night, something strange happened. For 6 rounds, Butterbean actually boxed. Not well by Larry Holmes' standards, but he moved, he jabbed, he showed defensive awareness. Holmes was winning on points, but he wasn't dominating. He wasn't making Butterbean look foolish.
That one got there. Right hand lead. Butterbean shakes his head. Lee lands a couple of right hands. He's flailing away. Holmes with his hand on the rope. Here comes Butterbean. He's wailing away now. Oh, left hook. Sends Holmes down. Larry Holmes is the absolute definition of the word veteran.
Has the movement, has the right hand behind it, and Larry Holmes gets the jab in. Butterbean has to regroup.
If this is the last fight Larry Holmes has, and came in here with the idea of a certain attachment to Larry Holmes. There's a little swelling and some redness around the left eye. Now, Larry Holmes is mixing up his jabs. Holmes said to us earlier, he thinks this is a 3-round fight.
For Butterbean, and it makes him have to gamble.
In the 7th round, Butterbean landed a right hand that wobbled Holmes, actually wobbled a former heavyweight champion. The crowd erupted. Holmes survived, won the decision, but admitted afterward, "He hits harder than half the guys I fought for the title. I'm not joking." That man can crack. Butterbean lost the fight on points, but he'd won something more important: legitimacy. He'd gone 7 rounds with a legend and earned respect from one of boxing's all-time greats. So how did it work? How did a man who looked like your dad at a cookout humiliate professional athletes? The answer is more complex than he could punch hard, though that was obviously part of it. Butterbean had figured out something that martial arts have known for centuries, but that modern combat sports had forgotten in their obsession with aesthetics. Combat effectiveness and appearance are not the same thing. Let's break down the actual physics. When Butterbean threw his right hand, he was generating force from mass, 400 pounds rotating into the punch. Leverage, short arms actually created more compact power. Technique, years of perfecting one punch meant perfect weight transfer. Timing, he waited for opponents to commit before countering. The result was a punch that generated somewhere between 1,200 and 1,400 pounds of force. For context, the average heavyweight generates about 1,000 pounds of force. That extra 200 to 400 pounds is the difference between "that hurt" and "where am I?" But there was also a psychological component that was just as important. Every opponent who faced Butterbean had the same thought process. Initial reaction: this is going to be easy. Look at him. After first exchange: wait, why aren't my punches hurting him? Final thought: usually something incoherent because they were unconscious. That psychological trap, the gap between expectation and reality, created hesitation, and hesitation in a fight is death. By the time opponents realized they were in serious danger, Butterbean was already loading up that right hand. What made Butterbean even more fascinating was his complete rejection of conventional training wisdom. While opponents were doing thousands of sit-ups, Butterbean was eating cheeseburgers. While they were running miles, he was working the heavy bag. It was a revolutionary approach. Build the style around the fighter, not the fighter around the style. But time catches everyone, even Butterbean. By the late 2000s, the years of absorbing punches were catching up. His reflexes, never lightning quick to begin with, were slowing. Younger fighters were studying his tape and figuring out the formula. Stay outside, move constantly, survive the early rounds. December 5th, 2009. Butterbean faced Peter McNeely. Yes, the same Peter McNeely who'd fought Mike Tyson. Both men were in their 40s. Both were well past their primes. The fight was sad, honestly. Two legends moving in slow motion, throwing punches that lacked their old venom.
Wants the brawl, the street fight. He wants to lure McNeely into that kind of a fight. McNeely's got to stay outside. I know he's an in-your-face fighter, but he's got a box jab and move. That's how Mitchell Rose handed Butterbean his only defeat.
The guy who beat Butterbean was 1-6. That should tell you something. Between the two guys, they have 89 wins, and neither of them have fought a live fight.
This fight has the skill and subtleties of a barroom brawl. Oh, he missed with the right, fires away with a couple of left hooks that connected.
And he's got McNeely in trouble, believe me. He's got McNeely in trouble. McNeely is not fighting well at all. He's out on his feet.
Powerful punches by Butterbean, and McNeely in trouble.
McNeely won by decision. It wasn't that Butterbean lost. It was that he looked old. The magic was fading. But here's the thing about Butterbean. He never made excuses. After the loss, he simply said, "I'm 43 years old and 425 pounds. What did people expect? I had a hell of a run." He was right. He'd fought in 20 different countries. He'd headlined shows in Japan, England, Brazil, and across the United States. He'd appeared in movies, commercials, and video games. He'd become a cultural icon. March 23rd, 2011. During a wrestling match, yes, Butterbean also did professional wrestling, he landed awkwardly and severely injured his legs. Multiple surgeries followed for a man whose fighting style depended on being able to walk forward and plant his feet. The injury was potentially career-ending. Most fighters would have called it quits. Butterbean fought twice more in 2013, at 46 years old, barely able to move. He won both fights by knockout. His final professional bout came on September 2nd, 2013. Appropriately enough, it was a knockout victory. Butterbean went out the way he'd always fought, on his own terms. So what do we make of Eric Butterbean Esch? On the surface, he was a novelty act, the fat guy who could punch. But dig deeper, and you find something far more interesting, a complete rejection of the way we think combat sports should work. Butterbean proved that. Aesthetics don't equal effectiveness. All those chiseled opponents with six-pack abs, they hit the canvas just as hard as anyone else. Style beats formula. Every trainer in the world would tell you to do it differently. Butterbean did it his way, and it worked. Commitment to your strengths beats well-rounded mediocrity. He had one great weapon and perfected it instead of being average at everything. Confidence is a weapon. The belief that he would win, even when logic said he shouldn't, became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But perhaps most importantly, Butterbean proved that there's no one way to be a fighter. The sport obsesses over weight classes, body fat percentages, and VO2 max numbers. Butterbean ignored all of it and still humiliated professional athletes who'd done everything right. Look at his highlight reels. And you should. They're all over YouTube. And watch the faces of his opponents. Watch the confidence drain when their punches bounce off. Watch the panic set in when they realize the fat guy is actually dangerous. Watch the moment of recognition, usually right before the right hand lands, when they understand they've made a terrible mistake. Butterbean wasn't a great boxer by technical standards. He wasn't a world champion. He didn't fight for alphabet soup titles or unification bouts, but he was something arguably more important. He was undeniable proof that the conventional wisdom about what makes a fighter great is, at best, incomplete. Now here's my question for you. Do you think modern combat sports have become too obsessed with aesthetics over effectiveness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And speaking of fighters who broke the mold, did you know that the man Butterbean fought in one of his most brutal knockouts, Johnny Knoxville, was actually inspired by another unconventional combat sports figure? To learn more about the wild history of celebrity boxing and how it nearly got banned, check out the video on your screen now. That's definitely without limits.